We are live. Welcome back, everybody. We are here, episode 2 of Aqua Eagle Chats. Today, we've got our freshman distance duo, Karina Long from Williamsburg, Virginia, and Marina Klein from Shreveport, Louisiana. How are we doing today, y'all?
Oh, we're doing great today.
So excited to be here.
Yeah, me too. We've got a really good conversation coming to y'all today. So, before we get started, just like I like to do with most of my guests, if you guys could just kind of walk me through how you got into swimming and what that process looked like from when you started to here at UMW.
You can go first.
You go.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, you're good. Take your time.
Oh gosh. Okay. So for me, I started swimming when I was really young. So I think like 5 or 6, maybe even like 5. And my older brother had swim. And so I would sit with my mom in the bleachers and watch practice. And my mom tells me that like I would always like want to jump in and just want to like join them. And I wanted to be like him. So I wanted to do it. And so my mom asked the coach, she was like, I know she's too young to be in any of the groups, but if I like pay, like, is there any way she could just like, I don't even know, kick in the lane or do anything? And he was like, yeah, sure. So she paid for me to be on the team, and I would literally just kick up and down the lane on a kickboard. And apparently I would like just kick and like sing to myself, which is a little weird, but I was having a great time. So I guess I loved it from that age, and I just wanted to be like all my older friends and like my brother. So that's how I started having the best time.
For me, I remember I asked my mom this exact same question one day, and I was like, Mom, like, why did you start putting me in year-round swim? And she told me that when, like, even now, she's not a very good swimmer, so she just wanted to make sure that I knew how to swim. So she put me into like year-round swim on my first team cost, which is like City of Shreveport swim team. What a creative name, you know? And she thought that I was just gonna do it for like a year or two, like learn how to swim, get the gist down, and then I could go do whatever I want. But I really did like it. I made some really good friends on the team, and I just have stuck with it since. And now I'm swimming in college.
Yeah, there you go. So
Yeah.
you all were both pretty young, right? And it sounds like it was club swimming that you all started with, not summer league, right?
Well, I basically started at this place called the swim school, which like just tells you how to move your arms in circles and like float on your back. And then I went straight into year-round swim.
Yeah, same for me. Like before the whole story I just told, I like obviously learned how to swim just like a swim instructor, like
Yeah,
fly,
yeah.
just how to float and not drown. And then I kind of went straight into a club.
Cool. And then along that way, I'm sure at some point you probably decided pretty seriously that you would want to swim in college. So was there a defining race or a moment that you knew in your process that you wanted to swim seriously?
That's a good question. So I think for me, like I actually didn't decide that I wanted to swim in college until like really, really late. So my junior year, when I was doing recruiting, everything like that in my junior year, started my senior year, I wasn't even sure if I wanted to swim in college. I knew I wanted to do a sport, but like I was deciding between swimming and running at the time. But I knew I wanted to do a sport in college. And I think a lot of that is because my sophomore year of high school, like after COVID and everything, I really noticed the importance and difference that exercise made in my life for de-stressing and just my overall happiness. And so I'm so excited to get back into swimming afterward and so motivated. And I had a really great coach on my club team named Coach John, who was just like really a mentor to me, and he coached me for a long time, like since I was younger on the first club team I was on, and I switched teams, and he ended up switching teams too. So he ended up coaching me for I think maybe like 6 years total, which is pretty crazy because that's a lot of time to spend with one coach. And so just like that year, getting back into it with me being so motivated and so wanting to do well after having that being taken away and getting to get back into it, he was just so encouraging and like definitely someone that made me realize that maybe this is something I want to do in the future more, because at the time I kind of felt like I was an okay swimmer, but I didn't feel like I was that fast. I didn't feel like I was that great. And when I started getting faster, mainly because of him and also because of my running helped that as well, he was just super encouraging and someone that like really made me realize like I am pretty good at this, and I maybe could do this in the future.
Okay, so for me, I didn't really start like committing myself to swim like until I was about middle school, like eighth grade, really end of middle school, because I would just go to practice like 1 or 2 times a week and I don't know, do other things. And then one day I woke up and I was looking at how my friends were getting super fast and I looked at myself, I was like, why am I not fast? And then I was like, oh, I don't go to practice. So then of course I got on that practice grind and I realized that some of the senior leaders on our team at the time, they went on and were able to continue swimming in college. And I looked at that and I thought that was a really cool thing that they were doing. And when they would come back and visit for the summers, they would tell me all about it, how they loved it so much. And I decided, wow, I really want to.
Oh, the
Lights
power just go
out.
up? Did the power?
Oh, it's motion sensor lights, so we didn't.
Oh,
lose.
nice. So just shake your arm every so often, I guess.
Yeah.
Sorry about.
You're
Okay.
good.
So then I realized that I wanted to do this after high school, but as soon as I got to high school, it got a lot harder because most of the people in my grade that swam with me all had the same ideas, same prospects that they wanted to swim in college. But as each grade went on, more and more of them were like, yeah, I don't really see myself doing this anymore. Oh, actually, I'm just gonna quit, you know. And my junior year, I was really not having a great time swimming, and at that point, I was really on the fence on whether or not I wanted to keep doing this. And if it was something that was going to stress me out so much, I was like, why am I doing this? But through my coaches and all my support, I eventually learned that I couldn't imagine myself without doing it. And I just started to have fun because I realized at that time that it's not always about dropping times. Because swimming, you can still have fun even when you're not dropping times. Like, per se, not making those huge cuts you usually do when you're like, in your like your younger teens. And that's when I ultimately decided, like, especially after my visit, that I wanted to swim in college.
Yeah. So hold that thought. We're going to get there
Yeah.
to that
Yeah,
recruiting
I didn't
visit.
want to.
But you guys both made some super good points there. I really like how you mentioned the coaches, the friends, and the family that, helped motivate you, but also emphasizing that swimming is more about just dropping time. It's also the lifelong relationships that you get out of it. And it's not just a one man or one woman journey. So, kind of bouncing back to that recruiting topic. So, you two were part of, I think, the first class, at least at UMW, that kind of returned to a normal recruiting process. So, you both got overnight visits, I assume. And I assume you maybe looked at some other schools, but if you could just sort of walk me through that recruiting process and what your thoughts were you considering other schools? I'd love to hear about all of that.
Okay, so at the time my senior year, I only took two official swim visits, one at UMW and one at another school. And ultimately I was deciding whether or not still I wanted to swim in college or just like go to a big like D1 school and just have like a completely different college experience, I would say. And when I came my visit, I was talking to coach. I got to meet the team, like swim in the pool, which was really cool to me. And I really enjoyed it here. And of course, I went on my other visit, and the other school I was looking at was a little bit closer to home. I mean, it was still like 5 hours away, but it was a little bit closer to home. And the school I was looking at, it was smaller, and I liked how here it is like a small school, but it's not like the smallest of the small schools. It's a little bit bigger, And I liked how here there's more opportunities I felt because it was close to ZC. And obviously, my main goal for college was just go not as far as possible, but I wanted to go super far away from my hometown, Louisiana, because I grew up in that same town all 18 years of my life, lived in the same house, love my house, but I wanted some change. And both of my parents, I'm so grateful for them. They were able to support me in like letting me choose wherever I wanted because they understood because they both didn't grow up in Louisiana. Like my mom's from Japan, my dad was born and raised in New Jersey, and they just decided to raise me in Louisiana, I guess. And I'm glad that they allowed me to have this experience.
Yeah, so mine was a little bit different because actually this was the only school I was looking at for swimming. The other school I was looking at and seriously considering was CNU, but I was looking there for running and not for swimming. So I knew that I wanted to go to like a small school and probably go D3 and do a sport. But at the time, so I ran cross country in high school, and I loved that, and I loved swimming as well. But I love both of them so much, and I was really stuck on having to choose between one because at the time I couldn't imagine not doing both of them. So I looked at both of them. I had my cross country coach, who I was also very close with, and was also a neighbor, and like I was friends with his kids, like just we'd known this family for a very long time. His son went to CNU. I had other friends that went to CNU. And so they were all really kind of encouraging me for that. And I went on a group trip there and I really loved it. And then I went on a group trip here and I really loved it. So I was like honestly super conflicted. And I remember at the time, even on my recruit visit here, I remember talking to Coach Anderson and him asking what other schools I was considering. And I mentioned CNU, and he goes, "Oh, well, they don't have swimming, so that's out. We don't have to worry about that." And I was like, "Yeah, that's out. Like, you're so right." I didn't really know what to say because in the back of my head, I was like, "Yeah, they don't have swimming, but like, I might want to run there." And obviously I didn't want to say that and like deter him or have him think that I wasn't super interested because I was. But like I think that was just a big thing for me. And I ended up just thinking like you can run for the rest of your life, but like you can't really swim at this level of intensity at this kind of place. You don't have this opportunity really ever again with swimming. And I was like, you know what? I want to take this opportunity. I really loved the school. I really loved the team. And I was like, that's what I want to do. So
Yeah, there we go. And hopefully for both of y'all, it seems like it's worked out pretty well so far. And I think both of you all had a very successful freshman year, had some best times. And I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about that freshman experience, specifically conferences. So I'm sure you went to high school states or maybe age group state championships at some point. And so I think that first college conferences meet can be a little bit intimidating. So I'd like it if you could kind of compare and contrast those two championship formats and just kind of tell us a little bit more about your experiences.
Okay, so for the main difference, I really felt the differences at our first like taper championship meet at FNM. In FNM, it was in November. I was still getting used to the college lifestyle, and I'm not gonna lie, probably wasn't keeping up a good like routine during taper for FNM. I wasn't going to bed like as early as I should be. I was going to bed pretty late, and I really felt the effects at the end of FNM. Like on that Sunday final session, I was like, wow, I've never felt this bad at the end of a taper meet before. And then after I thought about how my preparation led up to this, and I was like, oh, I really didn't sleep that much, and maybe that had a correlation. So with that happening to me for conferences, I try to emphasize having a similar like taper routine to I had back in high school, where I would just focus on like getting to bed a good time, eating a little bit better, trying to not be on my phone as much, obviously. And I thought it paid off because I did do pretty well in my conference meet, I would say, for the first one. And for the meet, I didn't really notice any big differences except for the fact that we all like love to swim to some extent, and I could feel it was a different atmosphere because in high school you'd have those kids, maybe they were super fast, maybe they were super slow, but they were just there because their parents wanted them to, or they were just there because their sibling was in it, or what, like who knows. But we are in Division 3, and at the end of the day we all chose to like come to these schools. We chose to go to conference, and I could feel there was a slightly different, more positive vibe in the atmosphere. And I really did like it, and I thought that it made me swim better at my meet.
yeah, I also like felt super similar about like the energy was definitely really positive. Compared to like seniors and everything, of course, the energy had been good and had been positive. It wasn't really the same level of commitment or just motivation, I think, that we felt at conferences because, like Marina was saying, everyone just really wants to be there and is really dedicated and committed. So I definitely think that like contributes a lot. And then having the team and everyone's excited for each other, everyone's supporting each other, and that's a really good feeling. So I really liked it. Like I had a really good experience for my first conferences, and I think that definitely that energy and like sportsmanship helped me do well.
Yeah, absolutely. And just for the listeners out there, I want to mention that both Karina and Marina were strong contributors to the 2024 Women's NJAC Championship team, University of Mary Washington Eagles, first ever in conference history. So, congratulations to both of you all. And I'd love to talk a little bit more about some of the swims we had there. And, you guys definitely swam your on events. Off the top of my head, Karina, you did 200 breast, 4 IM, and the mile, right?
Yes.
And then Marina, you did 5 free, 1 fly, but you swam the 8 free relay. So we've got some different stuff to talk about, and I'd like to break down some of the different events for both of you all, since for those of you all that don't know, it's probably kind of obvious by now, but I'm thinking a lot about being a coach one day, and I don't necessarily swim the events that they swim. So just getting their perspective on racing strategies really helps me out. And I think it's interesting to talk about as well. So, Karina, we'll start off with you. So, take me through your first event. You had the 400 IM, big drop from prelims to finals. So, walk me through
Yeah.
that.
So 4 a.m. is definitely like, that's like my event. Like that's my thing. And I will say it's a love-hate relationship because it is a hard event, but it is also my favorite event. And I think that racing strategy for 4 a.m., it's hard because at least for someone like me, I like will get anxious and I'll think too much. I'm a really big overthinker. So something for me is I always am just thinking so much about every little thing during my races and stressing myself out. So a big thing for me is actually I try to not think a lot about it before. Like I'm trying to think as little as possible and just try and race. But the one thing I do focus on a lot during 4 a.m., which I know can be a little bit of a hot take, and I know some coaches and I know some swimmers like don't necessarily agree with this, but I like to negative split each 100. And I'm definitely a back halfer. Like you'll see, I pick it up in the back half of everything. But especially, I like to swim each of those strokes like it's its own race. So like 100 fly, I'll take it out strong, and then I try to finish even stronger. Same with back. Leading into breaststroke, I want to go as fast as possible so I can have good power off of my crossover. And then like breaststroke, I'm trying to bring it home at that point, and then free, it's everything I have left. So just very honestly, it's almost like I negative split the whole thing, but even just each 100, just kind of focusing on that and not stressing myself out about what's to come and just focusing on being in the moment and racing is the thing that like helps me the most.
So, if I'm getting this right, it's that balance between keeping your brain on enough to understand that you should be negative splitting every 50, but also
Mhm.
trying to block out those nerves and the fear. And, obviously that race is super painful, but I wouldn't say that's necessarily a hot take. I think that negative splitting by 50 strategy is tried to be used by a lot of swimmers, but
Mhm.
not a lot of people can pull that off. So, good stuff there. But moving on, let's talk 200 breast a little bit, since that race I've seen a lot of different strategies executed. So
200 breasts is another 200 breasts. I actually don't really have much to say about this strategy because that's another thing. Like I I don't have a lot of really big racing strategies. Like my biggest strategy is to not think, to not have a strategy because like I said, that's what's worked for me in the past and to just shut my brain off and just race. So for 200 breasts, like honestly, since I'm more distance oriented, I don't even really think about pacing myself during 200 breasts. I just try to go out as strong as I can and just try to hold it the whole time because my pacing, since I'm not a sprinter, I don't feel like I need to pace myself as much. If anything, in a 200, that's like the shortest race I do. So if anything, I'm trying to sprint a little bit and I'm just trying to race it. So I honestly don't plan a lot for it. I just try to have fun and go out and race.
that makes sense. Yeah, you've got that longer distance. You're coming down to the 200, especially in yards. I can see where
Mhm.
it crosses into that sprint threshold. But so you've never really counted strokes or thought about how long you're gliding?
I do count strokes, but I do that with all of my breaststroke races. Like I like to keep that set stroke count.
Mhm.
So I would say like I do a little bit, but that's not like a big thing I'm focusing on usually.
I'm tracking. So it's
Anything
more of a
like
subconscious thought there.
yeah.
Okay, cool. And then last race for you, we're talking the mile. So the longest one in
Yeah.
the pool.
The mile, I'd say the biggest racing strategy is just have like a good song lineup in your head. Like you have to have your hype music, and then I have my same 3 songs I'll cycle through for the mile, and that is mainly what I'm trying to focus on, so I don't focus on the pain too much. But also just like really paying attention and thinking about like what my counter is telling me is a big thing. Like especially the first 500, I really try to settle into my pace. So for the first 500, I'm like hyper aware of how I'm feeling, what the counter is doing, what pace I think I'm going. And I always like to practice that pace and warm up. So I'm trying to think to feel I'm thinking back to how I was feeling at warm ups and how I was feeling doing that pace and trying to maintain that. And then as I settle into the race a little bit more, I tend to try and think about my turns because I notice when I get tired, my turns can get sloppy. So I usually just try to maintain good turns, maintain a good stroke rate and good technique, and just do whatever the counter says. And that's like pretty much it for me.
Yeah, cool. I never realized the counter swimmer relationship in the mile was so important until this year when I started counting for Luke every time he swam the 500 or the 1,000 of the mile. And so he would basically come up to me before the race and say, "Hey, this is what I need to split." I would shake it vertically if he was slower than the split. If he was a little bit faster than it, sometimes I would just keep it steady, or if he was at the pace, I'd hold it steady. And then if he was over a second under pace and I'm thinking, okay, I don't know if he's going to hold that, I would sometimes go side to side. But certainly, I don't know. A lot of people say distance races are boring to watch. I'm not a part of that group. I think it can be a lot of fun, especially I think the tactical side of it's really enjoyable. But let's flip over now to Marina. So you started out the meet with the 200 free first, where you were on the third place finishing team.
Yeah, I was third. Yeah. Oh no, I mean I was third on the relay, and then we also got third.
And you also finished third,
Yeah.
yeah. And you
Yeah.
had a really good split there, 157.2.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
The two free, I actually am such a fan of the two free, and I've learned. I used to be really bad at holding back in my two free, and I'd have my first 100 and second 100 be like only a couple, like 1 or 2 seconds off from each other, because the original strategy that I had was from one of my coaches back in like middle school that I have stuck with to today, which was just take out the 50, nice, well, not nice and easy, but like controlled to some degree. And then I would do a 75 build. And that last 75, I would just blast the legs as hard as possible. And it was a good strategy, but initially I would just take that first 50 out way too slow. That second 75, not fast enough. And that last 75, I'd have too much left in the tank. So now I've learned through these years just to take it out faster and faster. And now when I'm behind the blocks, I just tell myself to have fun with it. Don't be scared, because I am such a fan of doing these hard distance practices at practice, and I always survive them. I always make it out completely fine. So behind the blocks, I'm just like, I think about all those hard sets I do, and oh well, if I sprint the first 50 a little too fast, I always end up surviving. And that's how I was able to get that good time in the relay. And of course, I had the competition in the water next to me. I remember the girl to my left was super close, and the entire time, every single flip, I was just like, why am I not getting closer to her? Why am I not catching up? But I was just trying my hardest to touch that wall.
Yeah, those top three teams were really tight.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. Are you still breaking it down 50, 75, 75?
Now I just break it down as last 75, kill your legs.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
just try to think about go super fast, like not super fast, but just go fast, but save a little bit of legs till the end, because when I swim freestyle, my freestyle is more pool oriented, so that's why I'm able to swim it like that.
That
Like
makes sense.
I'm like stronger in pull than I am in kick. If that makes
Right.
sense.
And inherently that saves some kick for
Yeah.
your last 75 there. Okay. So kind of creeping up in the distances. Now we're up at the 500. You had a monster prelim swim. Was it 5:13?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, oh man, I remember I was actually timing on the
Mhm.
men's pool, and I turned my back. I don't know if it was instinct or what, but I turned my back and women's 500 is going on. And I see that you were out in 201 or something, pretty close to your 200 split on that 8 free relay. So what were you thinking in that moment?
So leading up to this year, Coach Anderson, after every single 500 I would do in a dual meet, 500 I did at F&M, he would just tell me, you're not taking it out fast enough. And my last 50 in the 500 would be like a second or a second and a half faster than the previous 50. And he would just keep telling me, you're not taking it out fast enough, go out faster, go out faster. And it took until conference to finally trust myself to go out faster, go out in 201. And I remember there was this one practice, it was a distance practice. We did like a couple 100s, a couple 200s, and then it was like a 400 all out. And then it was like multiple rounds and a 450 all out, and like a 500 all out. Or I think it was build. And I remember that practice, I just focused on dead sprinting that first 100 and just trying to hold on those last couple hundreds in like a little distance practice. And it was the hardest thing ever. But I just remember that practice behind the blocks. And also a notable factor I have to owe to my 513 is I saw Kaylee swim her 500 right before mine. And I remember I was talking to her in the warm-up pool, and she was talking to me about how she would go out in a 58, 59, and she went like 512, I think. And then I watched her go out sub-minute, and then I was just thinking, okay, if Kaylee's going out sub-minute, I definitely need to be going out sub-minute too, because we always push each other in practice, so I should be able to do what she does, and it really paid off.
Yeah, shout out Kaylee Curran, one of the hardest
shout out
workers on the
Kaylee.
team. So she's somebody that I can always respect. She puts in the work, especially coming off of her back injury. So anyways, now, oh man, 100 fly. So
Yeah.
we're getting back into the sprints again. So that's a big contrast, 5 free to 1 fly. I don't see a lot of swimmers doing that double. So talk to me about that one.
So originally, Coach Anderson had me entered in both the 100 fly and the 200 free for NJAX. And then last minute, he was like, all right, you've had a good meet so far. So he let me choose. And I chose the 100 fly because I had already done the 2 free in the relay, and I just wanted to see what I could do. And I will admit that this year I focused on a lot of distance fly training and a lot of distance swimming training as compared to my club team. We did a lot of sprint work, and we really didn't do that many distance practices. So I felt that there was a difference. I didn't feel as like sprinty, as my turnover rate didn't feel as fast in the water, but I still put down a solid time for myself.
Yeah, you won the C final, right?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, that was a good race. I think there were some people out there with you the first 50, but that 200 training, I think, certainly carried you through that second 50.
I could feel the differences from when I went like my best time in high school.
And what's your best time?
Just 59 mid. So I wasn't really that far off.
No, because you were what, 001? Something like that?
Like 1 or 2, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So there we go. Yeah, I think you're definitely in the ballpark to get that next year, especially, especially with college. That first year with weight training, I think, can be a bit of an adjustment with the sprint events. So I'd say you're tracking well on that front. All righty. So that was a ton of fun. And I think we're kind of getting into the end here, but I have a different sport specific question that I'd want to see if you guys could tie into swimming. So Karina, you talked a lot about how running played a big role in you growing up, but Marina, I see on Instagram, you're into F1, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know anything about F1, but both of you guys, if you have any connections between track or F1 or any other sport, and you feel like you could connect it to swimming.
Yeah, so cross country definitely was a big influence to my swimming because, like I said, I was really focused on that throughout high school. So especially my sophomore year when I couldn't swim with COVID, I was running all the time my own. That's what I would do for every time. If I was bored, I would go out and run 6 miles. I'd run 10 miles. That's how I would use my time. And so going into that year, and my junior year was the best year for my running and also one of the best years for my swimming. And I think a lot of that's connected because when I started getting better at running, and especially 5Ks it takes me 19 minutes and 19:30. So that's pretty close to how long a mile takes. Because when you think about it, 18, 19 minutes, even though they're different races, they're pretty similar in endurance. And so I found that having that experience of running is just so much pain. It's honestly otherworldly, the type of pain that you feel at the end of a 5K. It's crazy. And so being able to push that pain and knowing that I can endure that pain and I can have that endurance and trusting myself that I will make it, even if I'm literally going to be on the ground, laying down on the floor. I've been laying down on the ground at the end of races, running all the time. And so I was like, if I can do it there, I can do it in a mile for swimming. And that's about the same time. And so I figured, why not? And so that's like when my distance swimming really started to pick up. And I started to trust myself more, and it became a really good event for me. So
Yeah, that's an interesting parallel. My roommate, Michael Dye, he's on the track and cross country teams here at UMW, and we make parallels all the time to running and swimming, like that 1-to-4 ratio, like 100 in swimming is like a 400 on the track. And, it's cool to compare them. I know, obviously, completely different sports, but I think some of those energy zones might line up. But from a spectator's view, Marina, is there anything you could pull from F1, do you think?
It's like my answer is obviously be so different from Karina's, but the main thing that I would connect to swimming is my best friend that I met through swimming. Caleb was the one who introduced me to F1, because one day he finally convinced our coach to put on one of the practices on our big scoreboard. And I remember we were social kicking, and I was trying to talk to him, and he just kept turning his head to like look at the cars on the TV, and I was like, oh, what's going on right now? And then one thing led to another. I made fun of him for it initially, and then now I'm just as much of a fan as he is, and we just joke about it. I just think that it's a good thing to keep my mind off of swimming in those times where swimming can be overbearing, because I remember at some of our meets that we had together, we would just sit and like watch the races, watch stuff together, and it would just take my mind off the stress about having to race and stuff. So yeah,
That's a really great point you brought up that I don't think anybody's talked about so far. It's so good to have healthy outlets outside of swimming, just to take your mind off of that day in, day out grind, or even the stresses of a meet. So super happy you both brought up some good points there. But closing it on out, I've got some rapid fire questions for you all. So short questions, short responses, unless you say something that blows my mind, and then I'll probably want to dive into it. But let's get started. Favorite pro athlete?
Caleb Dressel.
Nathan Adrian.
Ooh, good choices. All right. Best study spot on campus?
I would say those little private rooms in the library on the second floor that are never open. But when they are open, it's the best day ever, and you get the best studying done ever.
I like the leaf things in the HCC, because then you have the dividers and you can't see anyone, and I get distracted so easily. So I like that.
Yeah, those good answers. Good answers. What are you guys studying at UMW?
I'm gonna probably do a major in chemistry, and I'm looking into a minor in data science right now.
I'm hoping to major in biomedical science, and I'm not sure what I want to minor in, but probably something that will help me with PT.
Nice. Marina, take Dr. Xiaofeng Zhao for data 352 and 353.
Mhm.
He's a great guy, and he loves the athletes. So we like our professors that support us.
Of course.
And then going back to swimming, what's the best swimwear brand in your opinion?
Tier.
Arena for Texas, because it rhymes with our names, of course.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I love a good Nike suit for practice.
There you go. What about goggles? Do you have a goggle brand you like?
Speedo.
Speed sockets all day, every day.
Yeah, I'm with her.
I was a Vanquisher wearer, and then this year I was
Me too.
converted into speed sockets, and I love them.
I feel like everyone, it's like the pipeline. You go
Yeah.
from Vanquisher to speed sockets.
Yeah, those
That's
are
when you
great
really
goggles.
made it.
They don't fit my eyes super well, so I just
Oh,
use
really?
the Arena Cobra
Yeah.
Ultra, I think, the ones with like the straps on the side, but that's
Yeah.
got to be some European in me, because I see all those dudes from Germany and Lithuania. They're always wearing them too. So this is my every video plug for some swimwear brand out there. If you're listening, please give UMW a suit sponsor. Tech suits aren't cheap, so could really appreciate if you could help us out. Reach out to me if you're interested. Best event in swimming?
Like our best event or our best event to watch?
Your favorite event?
Oh gosh, my favorite event is the 2 a.m.
I was about to say 2
Yeah,
a.m.
2
too.
a.m. 2 a.m. is a good one.
I know I said 4 a.m. earlier, but 2 a.m. is like my favorite. It's 4 a.m. is like more of an ego boost.
Yeah. No, I get that. I think probably my favorite race ever is 100 breaststroke, and I'm not a breaststroker whatsoever. But what about the worst event?
Mile. Sorry,
Two back.
Karina, but the mile is just so long.
I think 2 back is the worst event, and I stand by that.
Yeah, I don't know. I might be with Marina on that one. I think the mile's pretty bad. 4 IM's pretty fun. I think it might hurt more than the mile for me, but I think that it's at least pretty interesting. The mile, just that mental game was always tough
Yeah,
for me.
that's the biggest thing that you have to overcome.
Gotta have a good
Yeah,
song.
man. All right. So we talked about goggles a little bit. Straps inside or outside of your cap?
Outside.
Outside.
Okay. I'm an inside person, but I've noticed a lot of women like to put them outside of your cap. So is that just like something with long hair? Is it more comfortable?
I don't know. I used to be a double capper back in the olden days because for the life of me I could not have my caps down because I would swim with my head up, so the water would just hit me right here and just wash it off. And I remember the first time I swam my 1,000, my cap fell off, my hair tie fell off, my goggles magically stayed on, and for every wall I would sit there, go like this, look at the counter, and then I would flip. So yeah. But I still stuck with distance after that, even though that was miserable.
Jeez. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
All right. We've got two more. So if you weren't a swimmer, what sport would you play?
Well, I would run.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be so honest. I have no idea what sport I would play. I'd probably still be playing the piano because I'd have time in my day for that. But I don't know what sport I would do because I couldn't imagine my life without swimming.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a
Yeah.
good answer. I should start asking people, if not a sport, like an activity, because you can devote levels of time and effort into other things besides
Yeah.
swimming. So good answer. All right. Last question, y'all. If you had to describe this podcast in one word or one emoji, what would it be?
Okay, so for my number one draft pick emoji, this is what we were gonna go with, the star eyes, because I did have so much fun. I'm smiling this big, and also star because I feel so I feel famous that I was asked to be on this podcast, and I feel like only cool people are on podcasts. So that's why this is my choice. So thanks all for making us feel like stars.
That means a lot.
I almost did the one that was sweating because it was making me really nervous to have to pick an emoji. So I almost did that because it was stressing me out a little bit.
Okay.
But I decided that you're pretty cool. You're a pretty cool guy, Paul. So I think this podcast was a lot of fun. And like Marina said, I had a really good time. And it felt super cool to be on a podcast because I've never done that before.
Well, thank you guys again for coming on. I had a blast. I feel like we definitely got some good talking in there, and hope you guys are excited to listen to this and tune in to see who's on next week, y'all. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for having us.